Hey guys, welcome back to Mind Your Conversions by fibrai. And today I'm super excited for an episode with Lucia Vandenbrink, the founder of Increased Conversion Rate and Women in Experimentation. She's been doing this for almost 11 years now. Like when I was going through her profile and figuring it out what she has done, there's like a laundry list of stuff she has achieved in her life. She built her first web shop at age of 11, right? I think for her, the lemon stand in our side of the world is more like a web shop, which is interesting. She also is an author. She's a karate practitioner. She has also written literary journals. She has done Japanese studies, holds masters in journalism. So I think she has done almost everything that exists. Quote for me is, I've always heard jack of all trades, master of none, but I think there is jack of all trades and Lucia being like master of many as well. So I'm super excited to talk to her about conversion rate optimization, to talk to her about experimentation and the journey towards it. Lucia, like first question, how come you end up in this field? What led you to this field?
Yeah, I guess just curiosity. So like you said, I started my first web shop at 11. And at that time, it was quite hard to build a web shop. Like there was no Shopify. What I could do is I could code the website myself and then have this PayPal button and then people could buy something. And that for me was like, whoa, mind blown. No one ever bought anything. It was not a success in no way, but it was a great experience to build this little piece, this little lemonade stand, like you said, and just build that from scratch and have a piece of the internet that I created. I thought that was really awesome and it always kept my attention. And there were so many things that have happened over the years. Like we become so much better in data and collecting data. The next thing is ahead, which is AI. And it has always fascinated me what was going on, even though I made some side steps here and there. As you also said, like I wrote literary novels, I've been a journalist, but then in the end, I would always come back to this online space and I would just really love it.
Nice. No, this makes sense. And before we started, we were talking about cheese slicer as a product that you were talking about. What was the product that you started on your web shop?
So I created little bracelets from clay. I think it's also a hype now, but I was just creating those bracelets and then I thought, oh, I'm going to sell them online, but not sure that really matters. And I have never stick to the bracelets after that, but just the act of learning this trade of building a website, that is something that always stuck with me.
Nice. That's awesome. And so fast forward, like now you are leading a consultancy for increasing conversion rate. How come end up on more the consulting or consulting kind of thing and not run like you did a web shop, right? So you could have been and optimize it yourself. Why work with a lot many brands than just focus on one and be like grow it like crazy?
Yeah, I guess it has to do with interest. I don't feel much curiosity for me to create a product and sell it, but I am curious about the piece that is about people, actually. I'm curious about people and I'm curious about how people interact with things, with each other as well, but that's much harder to research. But then came the internet and we had so much data points to do our own psychological experiments on people. And that's just really fascinating to me. And when I was in journalism, I would write these titles, but I would always wonder, oh, but what if I wrote this different? If I had a different approach, would that work better for people? Would people read it better? So I always had these questions about how can I engage people to do a certain thing and how do people actually work? And somehow you can figure some things out inside the online world.
Yeah. And I heard you like this something I strongly believe that figuring it out how people will interact and testing it in a multiple way, you get to know the best way to talk to a person. Even just why do we have a blanket headline for everyone? Why can't we like personalize it to them? So I agree. But Lucia, talk to me a little bit around hear you that you're saying like from the psychology side. Do you think just psychology is enough to figure out what to do next? Or do you think like the data, because in conversion rate optimization, we talk about a lot of data, right? Like how much analytics you have, what all you're doing. So how do you balance between the two? Like how do we balance data, what it is saying versus how people might be thinking?
Yeah, so it's interesting, right? At one side, you have this big data piece that you need to understand and you need to know how to use it and you need to understand the process. On the same hand, you're trying to deal with people and you have to be very humane and understand a lot of people. So honestly, it's this field covers a broad spectrum of topics for sure. That's also interesting to me. Yeah, I'm not sure I answered your question correctly. Did I?
You captured the essence. What I was looking at, like when you run experiments for your
Mm,
customers, right?
yeah.
There's always, you can always show data and convince a CMO, hey, this is what we are going to go about.
Mm,
But there's also a gut feel associated. Hey, no, like we talk to your customers, this is what we feel. The data is
yeah.
not sure. How do you convince a CMO to
Mhm,
go with that gut feel and do things when
mhm.
data might not be supporting it?
Oh, so you're asking me how to convince a CMO to go for the gut feeling?
Yeah, to go for like a psychological A/B test or to go for something that you've heard from the customers, something new, a new approach. How do you convince somebody about it?
So you actually also use data. And because the way you phrase your question, it seems like those two are opposite. You might be able to see something in your data that leads you to believe there is a certain behavior there that people have. And that's why you want to make these adjustments. Now, how you execute on something that you see. So you might see, let's say, that you are selling a cheese slicer, for example, like I have here very randomly now. But if you sell a cheese slicer and that a lot of reviews are being clicked,
Mhm.
you might assume, hey, people are very interested in those reviews and they are important to convert. Then you can look to your data. Do people actually convert better if they look to the reviews? And then if they do, you might want to create an A/B test. Okay, I'm going to not downplay those reviews. I want to put them higher on the page. I want to make them bigger. I want to make that more important piece because it seems to be a really important piece. So in the end, it's data can be a very great tool to validate things, pre-validate things, and have a better direction to head towards than just random gut feeling.
Got it.
Random gut feeling, it can be a leader of things, right? Like I am very led by curiosity, which is gut feeling. But then in the end, if you also can combine that with data, that means, hey, I have this gut feeling, plus I have this data to support it. So that means, yeah, you're heading into the right direction. And that's how you want to work in Zero as well.
Makes sense. And Lucia, I know every one of us are right now talking about AI. Do you see in this process of data with gut feeling, like AI being helpful? Because one thing that when I talk to my customers, they say, hey, we have 10 data sources. And as
Mhm.
a human, it's tough to actually go through every data source. And you basically, okay, let me fix on the analytics data source, figure it out. But you also have behavioral analytics from like a company like a Hotjar or like a heat map from somewhere, right? So how do you see AI play in this and help us with overall in this process?
So, what I envision is that it will help us to go through a lot of our data. Like you say, we do have a lot of resources and insights, but actually, for example, just doing an analysis of a survey. Let's say you run a survey on your website or you send your customers a survey. Doing really good analysis on that costs a lot of time, a lot of effort. You have to code all the responses. You have to maybe go through hundreds of responses. And I think AI will just cover that. Right now, we're not quite there yet, but it seems just a matter of time. So that means that I probably won't be hired. My team won't be hired to do that kind of work anymore. And I think that's fine because that means that we are hopefully having more time to focus on the more complex stuff. Because what I see is AI can also already solve like simple zero problems. The low hanging fruit on your website, you can ask ChatGPT and or whatever tool you use. And there are multiple zero tools like yourself on the market that will tell you like, hey, change your button color, make this more visible, do a contrast here. But the bigger pieces and the bigger problems, I think we still need some creativity and some humane insights to solve bigger problems.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think when we came in and when we started Fiber AI, the idea was to see if we can do a lot more. And very quickly we also realized that AI, though being a big hype right now, is still very limited, right? Like it can't do a lot of things, and we end up doing like very simple, straightforward tasks. And the whole idea was for us is then, hey, how do we figure out the experts and enable them with AI rather than AI doing everything? And so, as a product company, we also feel like things like you said, how do you do survey calculations or like figuring it out what the survey is resulting out, or how do you figure out from a Google Analytics data what the path analysis of the user is telling you? Those are things that we can automate, and on that what action has to be taken, what has to be done, what kind of test should run, I think an expert can tell us better. And that's where we are also approaching. So I agree very much with you.
To say AI is already like a great second opinion. And
Yeah.
I often check myself and my thoughts with AI just to have a sparring partner. So my first sparring partner is now not a colleague or someone close to me or someone that I bump into, but now it has become AI just to double check things or, oh, what would you do? So it's become like a voice in a way in our process. Yeah, I think that's very interesting.
Yeah, makes sense. I think I am the same way. When I practice my sales calls, I use ChatGPT to become my customer and I talk to them. But
Yeah.
and Lucia, when I went through your website, etc., I saw like you've worked with large organizations like British Airways, you've worked with smaller startups. How do you manage, like, how do you decide and how do you handle such a diverse clientele? Like, when I started up, everybody said, "Oh, pick up focus, go into an industry, and don't like." That's how people have said in conversion optimization. But you've done across. How do you approach that?
It's a good question, but in the end, it comes from my interest in how people interact with each other, how companies are also set up, and how companies function, what kind of cultures are in there. How can you change anything? And can you even change anything? So, those are questions that I always have and that make it very interesting for me to see the insides of organizations. Right now, I also lead a team. And it's
Mhm.
also about, can I put the right team in the right place for us to make the most impact, for us to be the most helpful? Because in the end, sure, we need to make money, but together with that, you just want to do what you love, right? And you want to really help another brand. So that's also an interesting play for me, like what kind of people will work in that situation and or what team or what composition. But I also still do a lot of hands-on work.
Mhm.
So it's not just the team. Sometimes it is. But honestly, it keeps things and it keeps me sharp to see all those different organizations. I have worked in-house. I have led big zero programs in-house, but that kind of I think that was great for a period, but it limited in the end my overview of how companies work and how people work together. And I needed to zoom out and see more companies in order to understand that better. So that's where I am right now.
Got it. And I suppose because you're working with such diverse companies, you can also learn and apply some of those skills from each other to grow other industries, right? This gives you like a lot more exposure than somebody just working with banking or somebody just working like a certain specific field.
Yeah, and it's also like how we started. It's also how I am, right? I go from this to that. And in the end, I think what's the power that I have is that you have seen all those things. And like you say, you leverage that to help a smaller company from the things you learned at a bigger company, or you help a bigger company from things you learned at a smaller company. It goes both ways. And I think that's really interesting. And that's really what creativity is. And exactly that is something that I don't see AI doing quickly, for instance.
Yeah, no, makes sense. I completely agree on that thought. And Lucia, you talked about people to people interaction twice, right? Like you said, like this is what makes it interesting for you. And we have now started listening about AI to website interaction, AI to people interaction. What folks in San Francisco are talking about is, hey, every customer will have an AI agent of their own who will go and shop for them. So, what's your take? Like, how would the entire field of CRO evolve when it is not just optimizing for humans, but is also optimizing for agents? Do you see this happening fast? What's your take here?
Yeah, I think this is already happening pretty fast that you can already search for products in AI. And also people find my consultancy through AI. And I'm also really surprised, like, how does that even work? Does anyone know? Like, how do I pop out of that AI? It's still very interesting to me as well. But so it doesn't seem to be that far away. But as long as AI is in service of a human, I think we're still looking at human behavior. The methods and what that looks like for sure will change, but there will always be an element of human behavior and how can you influence that and how do you work with that? And that will always be there.
Makes sense. Yeah. Got it. And Lucid, on the similar lines, one thing that people say is if AI is going to do so much work, why are websites needed? Like we have seen an example where OpenAI launched that, hey, we have an integration with Shopify now. You can just shop here. You don't have to go to the web.
No, exactly.
And in that case, like the whole concept of CRO, at least from the point of view of websites, goes for a toss. Like it's just very difficult if you are not landing on a page. Do you see this happening? Do you see websites are dead? Do you believe that? What's your point of view here?
Yeah, and on this, we have probably websites will end. I don't know. Maybe they will still exist like newspapers still exist, but that format will change. Like a lot of things are changing because we also love individual people right now. We love influencers, and it's actually individuals right now that hold sometimes immense power, while maybe a few decades ago that was not seen at all. So there is an interesting change there where everything seems to become more personalized in that sense. And I think AI will also have a great deal to do with that. And like you say, those AI agents that shop for you, it's in the end, it's very tailored, right? And now we're still doing optimization for everyone. Like we just take a whole bunch of people and we want the conversion to lift for all those people. Most of the time, not for just one or a few. So I'm curious how that will change.
Cool. Makes sense. Shifting gears a little bit and talking a lot more about your experience in experimentation. And this has been a debate internally with my team as well, because I always say the velocity of experimentation is most important. And they talk about that the customer that you're serving doesn't even run 1 or 2 tests a month. And we are pushing like, oh, you should be doing like 20 or like 100 or 1,000 tests. I know like you've done 1 test a week to 100 tests a week for customers. How important is velocity of experimentation? Does it make any difference in conversion, or a really good 1 experiment is enough?
It really depends on the company, I would say. So for some companies, for sure, just running 1 experiment a month is already a lot. And I would always encourage, just running 1 experiment, just go ahead and do it because it's better than not running anything. So you have those companies, right? You have those companies starting out and trying to learn and trying to get into this process. But what A/B testing actually is, we often call it conversion rate optimization, but in fact, it's just a process to check if you're doing the right thing, if you're doing what works. It's a scientific process in which we look at data to tell us, like, hey, is this thing actually significantly better? Yes or no? You can practice that with buying things, but me and my team have also optimized a lot for newspaper websites, for example. And then it's much more about UX and how do you get people to really read? And how do you get people to maintain their attention? So it's much different, but in the end, you use the same validation process of A/B testing to make sure you're doing the right thing. Once a company embodies that and really believes in that, then it becomes a matter of everyone using this process to validate their gut feelings. So the thing we talked about before, we all have gut feelings, but we want to make sure we validate them and not just blindly ship things. And some companies are extremely good at that, like booking.com. That's, of course, a very known brand that runs so many tests. But what's happening there is that everyone can run an A/B test, everyone can set it up. It's very decentralized. But it really depends. And there's also the question of nature versus nurture in a way, about how the company is set up culturally, if that's ever going to happen. Because we want to be maybe like the booking.com, but the nature of the company might just be so different that it will never be. So yeah, there is always that. And sometimes it is just recommending start with one. And sometimes it's about, okay, how do we embody and give the power to the people in a way to A/B test and validate even more?
Yeah, I agree. And I think I have heard from multiple experts, especially the same example, booking.com, like they have embodied this culture of experimentation very strongly. Another one that I've heard is Airbnb, and typically like a lot more in travel, right? Like these whole travel websites, that travel companies have really done well with experimentation. And at least my learning has been wherever there's a culture of experimentation, the chance that they will be leading in all metrics is not just conversion rate, but also like lower bounce rate, better customer experience. All of those is always higher. And so I do think there's a correlation. But as you rightly said, start at least with one because it's better than not running even no experiment at all.
There's even research about what you're saying. So you have the book Experimentation Works from Stephen Tomke, if I pronounce his name right. And I know that there's research in there that says companies that are in the S&P 500 that experiment, and then you see the difference in growth, that the companies that experiment just grow much faster than regular companies. So that's very interesting to look at, that apparently it's a very good way to grow.
Yeah, I agree. Awesome. Lucia, I was going through your LinkedIn profile and I read one of your posts around a client losing 20,000 pounds a week and still like in an A/B test. And there is always a big ask, hey, will this A/B test be successful? What does success look like? And you have a test where somebody is losing money continuously and you eventually realize and shut down the test or learn from it. But how do you make a stakeholder understand that A/B tests are not just successful? Every losing test is also something to learn from. Like, how do you get that in with your customers? How do you make them understand? How do you still let them do a lot more tests in future rather than just shut down? Hey, we lost money. We are not going to do anything now.
It has to do with the mindset of believing that success also comes from failure, and that success is not just a random thing or something that will always happen, but by knowing that the process of success also means that you're going to have to fail and you're going to have to learn from what you're doing. So in whatever way you can foster that mindset, that's going to help explain why a losing test is not that bad. So that might be by saying, instead of saying, hey, you're losing 20K a week, you might say, we saved ourselves not 20K, but actually 40K, because if we would have deployed this on the full traffic, we would have lost 40K a week. And we would have never known, probably we would, because that's quite something. But this is a way of risk prevention, which is very helpful because you can actually still, instead of just going that direction, you can still steer into another direction. So that's very helpful. And this other direction might be the one where the success actually lies. And often, especially if you're running simple A/B tests, you can just test the opposite direction. So if you say, okay, removing those elements of social proof reviews don't work, then we're going to put them on top of the page instead. So you do the opposite, and usually that's already the solution. But by more complex features, experiments, etc., it might not be that easy. So you might have to search a little bit longer. But I would say it's about the mindset, and also the culture of the company needs to be embracing of the fact that people can fail. And that's not always the case. In some companies, failure is really looked down upon or shamed. That's a company where experimentation is probably not going to go down that well.
Makes sense. Yeah, I agree. Yeah. Cool. Lucia, I want to shift gears a little bit and talk about women in experimentation. In my previous role, before I was founder at Fibrai, I did another startup which was in women's health and wellness, which I exited. But so the whole idea of empowerment and getting women in core fields is very special for me. I want to learn a little bit around how did you end up founding a society or a club like this or a community like this? And I know like you have around 2,000 plus or 1,500 plus folks now. Yeah. How did you grow it? How did you reach out to people like that?
It's a good question. And I always say, I didn't grow this community. This community actually grew me because there was just a lot of demand for this. But the first thing that happened was actually that I noticed that the smart women I would work with, I wouldn't see them represented on stages. I wouldn't see their voices represented equally as I saw them being amazing in the workspace. So I thought that was odd, and we can talk about why that might be. Probably we won't be able to figure that out 100%. But I thought there is something with women that works against them being visible in that sense. And I thought, hey, I want to see the amazing people I work with on stage as well. And I want to hear their voices. So that's why I started it. The IT world, it is a place where often there's a lot of men. And also in the CRO space, there are great examples of men that build a lot of pieces of CRO space. But then in the end, when a field becomes bigger, you do want to see representation. And that's good for everyone in the end. So that's where it came from. And like I said, then I started posting about it. At first, I created a list of just of female speakers because often there will be lineups of events without any female. And then I would think, but how can this be? This is weird. So just to show, hey, there is this worldwide list of women that are public speakers. Here you go. Go ahead. They're all right here. Just to have a positive thing to say and just show like, hey, they're all there. But that kind of went viral. That's how my co-founder came along pretty quickly as well. And then we built out this community. We supported it because it, like I said, built itself because there was so much traction and so much desire and need for it in a way. That has been a very interesting journey as well. If you would have asked me like 5 years ago, would you ever want to do something like that? I would have said no. But then in the end, this is where I'm at.
Got it. Makes sense. I know I remember from my education days, we have a community called Women in Business. And I like what I distinctly remember and what was the more interesting part of me, we also had a community called Men for Women in Business, where men take charge to grow, be a mentor, etc. Have you thought of, because you talked about that in this whole experimentation and CRO community, especially because it's a lot more closer to IT, there's a lot of men. But have you seen some of those men being mentors to these amazing women who are also in this area? Have you opened up the community to them, or is still like a lot more focused on women in experimentation?
So we have our close community, which is just a Slack community for us to talk and to discuss things, sometimes about salaries or differences we see, but most of the time it's also just, hey, what A/B testing tool are you using? But then we also have an open newsletter. We have a summit where also we have male speakers and everyone. It's just open to everyone. But in the sense of mentorship, we don't do that much. And then it's also the question, should it be a man mentoring a woman or should it be another woman mentoring? It goes all the ways. It should go all the ways. But that's definitely an interesting piece because now, having women in experimentation is this separate thing. But how do you still engage it with the rest of the world? Because we're all here, we're all in this together. And how are we going to do this together in a sustainable way? Yeah.
No, makes sense. Hey, I am super, super excited about this community. When I heard about it, I was excited and there is somebody doing this, and it's really great that you are championing one of the causes. Cool. And Lucia, we are at the end of our discussion. I do want to end it on a high note with like certain fun questions. I'll ask you like a couple of them and discuss. Okay. And it'll be like a rapid fire. So answer whatever comes to your mind first. Yeah. So my first question is, what's one of the core fear of the current AI trend and one of the core strength of the current AI trend that you think?
Of course, the fear is going to be used for bad things. And I think we saw this week that there was this instance where you could see on Google which kind of queries were put into ChatGPT. Now that has already stopped, but it's with every new amazing great thing is also comes the dark side, and how can it be used against people, and how do we manage that as a culture, as humanity? So that's the scary part. And the great part, I think we talked about it, we just want to make our lives easier and focus on the more important stuff, and I hope it will work out that way.
Yeah, makes sense. Okay, and my second question will be, if you weren't doing CRO, what you're doing right now, what would the other thing that you would do that will make you happy, that will make you fulfilled?
Yeah, so like I said, I wrote novels, but I do that on the side. So I do that already. But honestly, I'm a writer, I'm a thinker. So I would be a writer.
Got it. Makes sense. Okay. If you could magically solve one challenge in your daily work, what will that be?
I guess it's something I try to solve every day, but it's a big one. It's not just make this easier, but what I'm trying to solve also with A/B testing is belonging. Like I would
Mm.
love for people in organizations to feel a sense of belonging in what they're doing, that they feel like, hey, I'm in charge, I can solve some problems, I can move the needle. And I think A/B testing is a great way to do that, because an intern might have a great A/B test idea and the CEO might as well. And I love that about it. And it gives everyone a voice, a space to think, to make decisions. So I think it helps people find belonging. And that's what I guess that's my ambition in life, to give people belonging. And that also aligns with what I'm doing in Women in Experimentation.
Nice. Awesome. Okay. Last question. If you could give one advice to your younger self, what will that be?
Yeah, so I always come with these big topics about belonging and culture, but I also would like to say to myself, like, have some fun. Don't think too much. Have fun. I don't know, pull out a cheese slicer, for example. Have fun. Be a little bit relaxed while doing all this heavy lifting that you're also trying to do.
Yeah, no, I love it. Like, I think it's very important to be a little light all the time so that you can enjoy the world around you. Like, work is always there, things are always there. I love the cheese slicer. I think that I will remind myself all the time to just get to lighten the mood. But thanks, Lucia, for this wonderful conversation. Loved talking to you. I'm hoping we'll have many more in future whenever we grow this. I'm hoping to have more guests from women in experimentation from that community as well.
Good with that.
Yeah, and yes, and we are in the same field, so hoping to bump in each other over time. So yeah, thanks again for coming on the podcast. Thanks a lot for your time.
Yeah, thanks so much for the invitation and your time and attention. And yeah, I hope to speak soon.